everyone, and welcome to Lore You Should Know. This is the segment where we jump into tiny bits of Dungeons & Dragons lore and talk about it for your enjoyment.
And edification, potentially.
Exactly. I used to say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, edification's a good one, right?
Yeah.
I know. But I went with enjoyment, another E word.
That's perfectly fine.
I am Greg Tito, and I am joined by Chris Perkins.
Hello.
And today on Lore You Should Know, we're going to talk about the Dead Three.
In our dulcet tones.
Our dulcet
yes.
tone, so make sure it contrasts with the evil, maniacal laughter
right.
of the Dead
yes.
Three, perhaps.
Yes.
So the Dead Three are a group of deities.
Correct. Oddly enough, not so dead deities.
Yeah, some have come back a few times.
As happens in the Forgotten Realms, gods die and come back all the time. And in this case, we're talking about three gods who all got their butts kicked, died, and have come back in new forms. Oh. And those gods are Bhaal, Bhaal, the god of murder, because I guess you need a god of murder.
Doesn't everybody?
Bane, the god of tyranny, and Myrkul, lord of bones.
Which one is the god of murder? Is it Myrkul?
Bhaal is the god of murder.
Oh, he's just the...
Yes, he is the... in some respects, the face of Baldur's Gate. He is the skull that you see on the cover of Baldur's Gate game boxes.
Yes. And there was an adventure murder in Baldur's Gate.
Exactly,
that was
yes.
a play on that as well.
Right. We did that product as a bridge between 4th and 5th edition.
Yeah. So you mentioned that they were alive and then dead and then alive again.
Yeah, they got basically murdered at the end of the Time of Troubles.
Right.
And then Cyric, kind of a new upstart god, rose to kind of take the mantle of their power and become this god of chaos. But, and Cyric's still around, being all chaos and stuff.
Yeah.
But the three, as happened after the Spell Plague, many of the gods were reshaped, reformed. Hello, New Edition.
Hello. Here we are.
And here we are. And so... Bhaal, Bane, and Myrkul came back, but there was sort of this divine edict that came with 5th edition, which is that the gods have stepped away from the world or been forced to step away from the world and leave the world to mortals.
Right.
And
yeah, so going back, because now we're getting to modern times, but like, can you talk a little bit about how these gods were introduced in Ed Greenwood's, and the first products about the Forgotten Realms? Were they always as prominent as they have been?
Well, there are so many gods in the Forgotten Realms that it's like many others on the list. They weren't necessarily prominent in the way that, say, Mystra is prominent, or the way that Lathander has become more prominent. But they trace their origins back to the earliest editions of the game, but it really wasn't until the Baldur's Gate video games came out that Bhaal really kind of became a superstar in a way among deities and became he became a central figure of that city and sort of what Baldur's Gate is all about.
Yeah, but then you mentioned the Time of Troubles, but those were talked about in
novels. Exactly, yes. There was a series of novels that really sort of carried that story. And then Ed Greenwood released a series, with TSR, released a series of 3 adventures that you could play out the Time of Troubles.
Oh, okay.
And they were named after cities in which the Time of Trouble sort of played out. One of them was Waterdeep. Another one was Tantris. And you could actually adventure in the world of Forgotten Realms and see gods come down and start smacking each other around.
Right, because that was what happened in the Time of Troubles.
That is essentially...
Io cast them out and
they all
made them walk around as mortals.
Right.
And they could be killed.
Exactly. And so they went on murder sprees, killing each other off, thinning the herd, as it were. And among the casualties were these 3 evil gods. And the way that these gods exist now, these dead 3, just to sort of stay focused on the topic at hand, is they've basically said, no, we're not going to stay away from the world.
Oh.
We want to keep meddling. And so we're going to keep meddling, and we don't care what the rest of you think.
Mm.
But the penalty for doing so is they are mortals.
Okay.
They are killable mortal beings. And so you can encounter them still.
Currently in the current state of
in the current state of the Forgotten Realms, you can encounter them in the flesh, as it were.
Mm.
So they are not as powerful as gods, but they are much more meddlesome.
Understood.
And they're still pretty mighty powerful, and they still attract followers. And so there are Bhaalites and Bainites and Myrkulites running around the Forgotten Realms like little toadies doing what these three uber-powerful beings want them to. But yeah, you can find them, corner them, and kill them if you really aim to.
Interesting. So let's go through them. So Bane, what can you tell me about him?
So he's kind of the ringleader of the three. He's the brains of the operation, for lack of a better word.
Do they work together? Are they in concert?
So they're all reflective of a different kind of evil. So Bane is the lawful evil one.
Mm.
So he is the one. He's the man with the plan, as it were. And he's the one kind of corralling the others and saying, "Hey, if we're going to accomplish our evil goals, then we need to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll lead. I'll tell you what the plan is, and you carry the shotgun, and you carry the money bag, and we'll figure this out together."
Okay.
So as the god of tyranny, or a representation of tyranny, he knows how to make people do things and get things done.
Mm-hmm.
And so his worshippers are all about forcing their will upon those they consider to be beneath them. And in Baldur's Gate in particular, they're the ones that kind of leading the attacks against whatever.
The Bainites.
Yeah, the Bainites are. And that Bane symbol is a black gauntlet worn on the right hand, so often his worshippers have that going for them.
A single black gauntlet?
Yeah, one black gauntlet on one hand.
And does he have like a base of operations right now? Or
Not that we know of.
Okay.
But much of the Dead 3's activity is currently centered around Baldur's Gate and that sort of middle part of the Western Heartlands.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you're most likely to feel their influence.
And what does Bane want? What is? And you said tyranny, so he just basically wants to set up
rulership. He wants to be in charge. He wants to raise a big throne and sit on it and have everybody subservient to him, with little thrones, one to his left and one to his right, for Bhaal and Myrkul. Although honestly, Bhaal and Myrkul don't care about that. So those chairs will probably
to the left of me.
empty. Right.
Jokers
Two
to
empty
the right.
chairs, slightly smaller than his, to his left and right, where they can sit if they want to, and they will never do that. But that's his plan.
Are they? Is Bane paranoid at all, since he is killable and being an avatar right now?
Far be it for me to crawl into the headspace of a lawful evil tyrant, but
as Dungeon Master,
I
many
think
of us have to.
Exactly. I think his fatal flaw is his overconfidence in himself and his fans. So,
yeah,
I don't think he has many doubts that he'll succeed.
Got it.
I don't think he's considered the scenario of getting killed a second time. That's not on the plan.
We're following the plan this time.
Exactly. Yes.
I'm the one in charge.
That's
Listen
right.
to me.
Yes. He's got his marketing campaign, and he's got his bullet points, and he's got his PowerPoint presentations. He's got it all sorted out this time. There's no chance of failure.
And other than not killing you, what does being a follower of Bane represent?
You're a bully.
You're a bully.
Yeah. You get to bully people and have somebody above you say, "Good job."
Yeah, you're backed up by a literal god. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's at its base level thuggery. Thug mentality.
Interesting. Okay, so if you're creating low level villains that are followers of Bane, like that's a character trait that anybody can use.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And when you meet a Bainite, they're like thugs with very high opinions of themselves, and they like to lord over their lessers.
By using the word thug, is it mostly martial type of characters, or okay?
Yeah,
they don't. There's not a lot of wizards, not a lot of sorcerers.
No. In fact, in the Dead 3, if you want magic, you want to talk to the Myrkulites.
Ah, okay.
Because while the Bainites are largely fighters, in the sort of class sense of the word, they're warriors, armored and
Yeah.
using weapons to beat you into submission.
Well, there may be clerics as well,
Right.
That at least can call upon
Yes,
the Bane.
yes,
The
exactly.
powers.
Yes, there may be priests of Bane leading them,
But even they.
but even they are armored, weapons, bashing you over the head with a morning star or mace until you submit to their will
Got it.
with their black gauntleted hand. And then
I got the image now. All right, it's gross. And then so the Myrkulites are a little bit more.
The Myrkulites are necromancers.
Hmm.
Their deity, who again is mortal, is Myrkul. He is the Lord. He's called the Lord of Bones because he is about all things dead, skeletons, corpses. He hangs out in graveyards. His lair is probably under a graveyard somewhere, some sort of necropolis, I'd reckon.
Yeah.
He is completely driven by dead things in all kind of the worst aspects of that. Foul, degenerate kind of creature he is. And his followers are mostly necromancers or channel necrotic energy in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And they, of the dead three, basically use their magic to desecrate corpses, corrupt them, and transform them into lesser undead, the likes of skeletons and zombies, which they can just use as minions. You always repurpose the bones if you can get your hands on them.
Right. You can be a servant many times.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So was Myrkul a necromancer on his own? Or?
Yeah.
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 And then did he get ascended into godhood, that type of thing, or was the conception was that he was always a god?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to.
All right. Gosh, that's been a long time since I've been able to stump you like that.
Yeah. I remember.
Yes.
Just going quickly back through the lore. I worked on my first contact with Myrkul was back working on Dungeon Magazine issue 73, and we did an adventure called Eye of Myrkul, and featured his minions extensively. He ascended to godhood alongside Bhaal and Bane. They were essentially mortal men.
Oh, okay. So he probably was an
Yep.
actual necromancer who got his comeuppance to
Yes.
To be a god.
Yes, he was a human necromancer.
So you mentioned that he was hanging out in graveyards, and do you think warlocks would use Myrkul as a patron for anything like that?
Oh, that's an interesting idea. I could see that.
Yeah.
It could be. It's a little bit different because our core warlocks basically focus on either Fae or Archfiend or sort of great old ones.
Yeah.
But I could imagine in a campaign, Myrkul or a fragment of Myrkul being essentially a warlock patron.
Yeah. And also, since he's not, he's a god, but he's got a different state of being right now. So.
Right. And Myrkul appears these days as basically a skeleton, an animated skeleton of a man wearing black robes and a black cowl. So his face is kind of hidden and obscured, and his followers kind of mimic his appearance. If they're not dead themselves, they try to look dead.
I see. Right. Through makeup and disguise, be like, look,
sometimes,
I'm just like you, buddy.
Yeah, or they'll do weird ass shit like tear their faces off and rip them, cleanse them through some sort of magic, and so they're living but sort of skeletal in appearance.
Gross.
Very gross.
But I like that image of having a character or a adversary that is just hooded and cowled until you get like one glimpse of like, oh wait, that's
right.
There's a skull face under there.
Yeah. So not surprisingly, the Bainites like having the Myrkulites around because hey, undead minions that we can throw at our enemies, till we're blue in the face. That's kind of nice. But otherwise, they're just kind of creepy and weird, and kind of leave the Myrkulites to their dead things.
And are they generally more neutral, or are they?
No, Myrkulites tend to be on the evil spectrum, neutral evil, which means law and chaos don't really concern them. They're basically concerned with their own
studies and academics.
Exactly. Yes.
And
they're always
exactly.
and these are always very foul experiments that they're conducting.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. And then you're right. The pact being like, okay, I'll be the tyranny, I'll be the leadership, Myrkul, you'll be the person who creates, or your followers will be the ones who create our army.
Yes, and we'll also use your spell casting ability for other things too, artillery, things like that.
Got it.
Yeah.
So then how does Bhaal fit in?
So Bhaal, not surprisingly, is very attractive to assassins. The god of murder basically has assassins as followers. Rogues too, but basically killing is his thing. Painting the streets in blood is Bhaal's forte.
So that's interesting. So it's not just
Yes.
the being of dead and raising
Right.
of creatures like Myrkul, and it's not the control and the
Right.
cruelty of Bane, but it
Yes.
is the act of taking life away.
Exactly. And so not surprisingly, his followers tend to be chaotic evil.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to tear down people, tear through people.
And civilization? Do they have like
Yeah.
an idea of like ripping down order in a way?
Very much so. They abhor any sort of societal imposition on their ability to kill. A very survival of the fittest attitude. Barbarians sometimes are drawn to Bhaal, because of that bloodlust that he seems to crave.
As well as that anti-civilization kind of feel.
Exactly. So it's kind of a weird combination to have Bhaal and Baldur's Gate together, because here you have a sort of a bastion of civilization on the coast, and you have this god who's constantly trying to tear that down. But for whatever reason, Bhaalites like to hang out in Baldur's Gate, probably because it's a nice killing ground. You can kill people, and everybody's so preoccupied with their own lives, they don't seem to care.
Interesting. Yeah.
There is an apathy in Baldur's Gate that I guess Bhaal would find appealing.
Yeah, and I've heard, and I apologize if I'm repeating something that I've said before, but like that if you were to map it to the DC Comics universe, Waterdeep would be a metropolis and a much more of a bastion of the good in civilization, where Baldur's Gate is the Gotham, is the always kind of in darkness, a lot of lawlessness happening there. There's people who are fighting for law in Baldur's Gate, but it feels like it's almost a losing battle.
Exactly, yeah. And Baldur's Gate is known for its thick fogs, and a lot of people travel in escort because you don't want to walk through the fog in that city at any time of day. You're likely to get mugged and murdered.
Right, because the Bhaalites are there as well.
Yes.
So assassins, what are the tools that Bane is going to use these assassins? Is it like sending them out on missions, that type of thing?
So with Bhaal, it's just go forth and murder. I'll be over here murdering somebody else. I'm not sure Bhaalites really get any sort of orders from their Dark Lord. They simply call upon Bhaal to, give them the strength to slash their way through the guts of society. And if he does, great. If he doesn't, great. But all of the Dead Three, to some extent, can empower, like all gods, even though they're in mortal form and can be killed, they can imbue upon their mortal subjects some measure of their power. And that's how we ended up with things like Bhaal spawn and Bane spawn and Myrkul spawn, these individuals who have been invested with more than just a tiny, tiny fragment of the god's power, but may actually be almost like avatars of these deities.
Interesting.
And so what the Bhaalites hope for is that Bhaal will just imbue them with a little splinter of power so that they can go out and kill people better.
Eesh.
And
yeah. And what does Bhaal appear like now with the?
So he typically takes the form of a skull-faced man, usually bare-chested, but not always, with tattoos and one or two daggers. They like up-close personal kinds of killing, not the shoot you from a rooftop type of killing.
Okay.
They want to be in your face when they kill you, so they pretty much use these curved, both Bhaal and his followers kind of use these daggers to come in at you and slash you to pieces.
Gross.
Very gross.
So he's like a skull face, but otherwise normal flesh body.
Yeah.
What are the tattoos of?
His favorite songs.
Mom, I love you.
Exactly. Mostly they're. That's a good
like
question.
Shapes and things like
that. They're abstract.
Okay.
As far as I can know, as far as I recall.
Mom. Do his followers also,
yes,
tattoo themselves?
Yeah, they do. Or sometimes they will scar themselves.
Ooh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense with the dagger type thing. Yeah.
These people literally have no life. This is all that they're really.
Yeah.
good for.
Well, that's why they make such horrifying villains.
Right. Yes. And the fact that they're working together means that you can get these sort of combination squads. If you've got the Bainite kind of leading the way, or in the case of a priest providing healing where necessary, then you've got the assassins and scouts who are going out finding victims, dragging them into alleys to be killed, and then you don't discard the corpse. You have the Myrkulite animated, and it walks away with you.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you got another party member. That's terrifying.
Just a little.
Yeah, and that'd be a great foil, if you have a party of your adventurers good aligned, and then all of a sudden you stumble upon an evil aligned party. That's,
Absolutely.
A lot of analogs. It's like that. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for the movie Us.
Yes.
But it frightens my soul every time I see it, and now I'm thinking like, ooh, how great would it be to have which is a trope you've used in Dice Camera Action a couple of times as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And while the Dead 3 are kind of part and parcel with Baldur's Gate, their followers can be found anywhere in Faerun, really, either apart or working together toward a common evil.
Do other denizens of the Forgotten Realms know that these three gods are back and working, or is it like a boogeyman type story?
I think there's no official stand on that. You can take it either way. Some people in clergy, like in temples of other gods, might know that they're around and caution their servants to beware of that. Certainly, I think it's probably better known or more likely to be known in somewhere like Baldur's Gate than elsewhere. But you can really play with the idea that the gods aren't, screaming from the hilltops, "Watch out! These three evil gods are lurking among you," because inciting panic is not in their portfolio. But they may have agents working against them to try to take them out.
Understood.
And that's, I think, part of the reason why it's interesting that, despite their power and their morbid fascinations for death and such, Bane, Bhaal, and Myrkul do have to keep a low profile. If they don't, the followers of some other god are going to find them and try to whack them.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of interesting. It's like they're exerting more influence in the world because of their presence, but that's a risk.
Exactly. Yes. It is fascinating, too, though, from a campaign point of view, that you can actually fight these guys and kill them.
Right.
And have the bragging rights. We killed gods.
For now.
Yes.
Who knows when they'll come back. Since
we haven't statted them up as mortals in 5th edition. Maybe we'll get around to that at some point.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. But I like, even now, just having tendrils of their activity happening in the background. It's a fun way to get some world building going on in your campaign.
Right.
So you mentioned that the good alliance. Well, maybe this is delving too far, but how exactly were these gods able to make that choice to come into the world back again, to have this avatars? Was it just they just willed it so and it happened?
Yeah. The other gods smartly listened to Ao and said, "Okay, yeah, we'll let the mortals have their shot. We'll watch from afar and try not to meddle so much." Because, if there's another time of troubles, maybe it'll be me who gets killed. That's always a concern. So they've withdrawn, but these three are just belligerent.
And they don't give a fuck.
They do not give a fuck. And
they're messing it all up.
Right. And so they are kind of peeing in the pool a little bit and thumbing their noses at authority. And Ao's like, "Whatever, kids, learn the hard way. I don't care."
Right. Well, let's hope that there's some adventuring parties out there that
who are willing to teach them
a lesson.
Teach them a lesson. I hope there are.
Excellent. All right, cool. Well, thank you, Chris. If people have any questions about any of these...
By the way, Baal's real name before he became a god was George. No, I'm just kidding. But I hear he hates it when you call him that.
Hey, George. Shut up. I'm Bhaal. Awesome.
That's not canon, actually.
That's not canon.
I just made that up.
All right, we'll come up with different names that was his name beforehand, and you can tweet at where can people do that at for you?
I am on the Twitters at Chris Perkins DND.
Excellent. Well, alternate names for what Bhaal was named before he died, opening up the floodgates.
Oh dear.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Bye-bye. Good stuff. I didn't even realize all of that about them in our world now, or in the Forgotten Realms now. So we'll see how that gets. There's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of plot threads there.
Yes.
Yeah, I dig it. And now I want to, I have my Waterdeep campaign. I'm going to start being like, oh yeah, by the way, there's some Myrkulites over there. There's some.
You can fight them in that new thing coming out.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's a thing. All right, so we got time for one more of these, and we're going to talk about the 9 hells.
The 9 hells.
You ready?